Commander Veltar floated in the observation chamber of the stealth ship Silent Judgment, his 6 eyes focused on the blue-green planet spinning slowly before him. Earth, the locals called it. Such a simple name for such a strange world. Another. War has ended, reported Science Officer Kethara, her tentacles dancing across the holographic controls. The humans fought for 6 years this time, millions dead. Veltar's main eyes never left the planet, and yet their population continues to grow. Their technology advances even during conflict. Most curious. The Silent Judgment had been watching. Earth for 47 standard cycles now, hidden behind advanced cloaking fields that made the ship invisible to the primitive sensors below. It was one of 12 observation vessels positioned throughout this small solar system, all part of the Zephyrian Collective's careful study of species. 7,834,291 the humans. Kethara pulled up data streams, showing the aftermath of the latest human conflict. Cities burned, but already new ones were being built. Weapons that had killed millions were being turned into tools for construction and healing. It made no sense by any civilized standard. They adapt too quickly, muttered data analyst Mordun from his station. Look at these numbers. 50 cycles ago, they barely understood electricity. Now they have primitive computers and nuclear weapons. This rate of development is ... unusual. Veltar finally turned from the viewing port. His species, the Zephyrians, had ruled known space for over 3,000 cycles. They had guided, protected, and when necessary, eliminated hundreds of developing species. They understood the patterns of growth that all intelligent life followed. Except these humans seemed determined to break every rule. Show me their current technological assessment, Veltar commanded, the chamber filled with holographic displays. Charts showed human progress in mathematics, physics, chemistry, and engineering. Red warning markers appeared next to several categories. Nuclear. Fission achieved 2 cycles ahead of our projections, Kethara read. Rocket technology developing faster than expected. Computer systems showing unusual innovation patterns. And Commander. She paused, her skin changing to a worried blue color. They have begun to look at the stars with serious intent. This was the problem. The Zephyrian Collective had been the supreme power in the galaxy for so long because they controlled when and how species reached the stars. They watched developing worlds carefully. If a species showed promise and could be guided to become peaceful members of galactic society, they would eventually make contact. If a species proved too aggressive or unpredictable, they would be quietly eliminated before they could leave their home system. Humans were proving to be neither. They were certainly aggressive. Their history was one long story of conflicts. But they were also capable of incredible compassion and creativity. They could wage terrible wars and work together to heal the damage. They could create weapons of mass destruction, then use the same technology to power their cities. What does the Collective Council say? Veltar asked. Mordun's expression grew even more troubled. They are ... debating. High Counselor Zethmos believes we should make contact soon. Guide them away from their violent tendencies. Counselor Nixandra thinks we should eliminate them now, before they become a threat. And Counselor Velthara wants to continue observing. And what do our projections show if we do nothing? The holographic display shifted to show potential future timelines. In some, humanity destroyed itself within a few cycles. In others, they spread peacefully to nearby star systems. But in far too many scenarios, they became something the Collective had never encountered before, a species that could challenge Zephyrian dominance, not through superior technology, but through sheer unpredictability. The problem, Kethara said quietly, is that they do not follow the standard development patterns. Most species focus on either military advancement or peaceful growth. Humans do both simultaneously. They create art while building weapons. They explore space while fighting wars. They develop philosophy alongside nuclear physics. Veltar studied the data. Every other species the collective had encountered could be understood through careful analysis. Their motivations were logical, their development predictable. Even the most warlike species eventually settled into patterns that could be managed. But humans seemed to thrive on chaos. They made their greatest discoveries during their worst conflicts. They created their most beautiful art in their darkest moments. They showed the most cooperation when facing the greatest challenges. Show me their response to natural disasters. Veltar requested. New displays appeared showing human reactions to earthquakes, floods, and storms. Instead of simply rebuilding what was lost, humans consistently built back better. They learned from each disaster and created new technologies to prevent future damage. They turned temporary refugee camps into permanent communities. They used destruction as an opportunity for innovation. Do you see it? Veltar asked his crew. They do not just survive adversity. They use it to become stronger. This was what worried the collective council. Every simulation they ran suggested that contact with humanity would change galactic civilization in unpredictable ways. Humans might accept Zephyrian guidance at first, but they would inevitably begin questioning, experimenting, and innovating in ways that could destabilize the careful order the collective had maintained for millennia. "Commander," Mordan reported, "we are receiving new data from the observation post near their moon. The humans have succeeded in landing on its surface. They are already making plans for permanent settlements." Veltar felt a chill in his blood. The moon landing had been projected to occur at least 5 cycles in the future. If human development was accelerating beyond their models, the window for safe intervention was closing rapidly. "What does High Command recommend?" he asked. "Continue observation. They believe we still have time to make a decision. The humans are still confined to their home system, and their technology, while advancing quickly, is still primitive compared to ours." But Veltar was not so sure. In his long career, he had observed dozens of developing species. None had shown a combination of rapid advancement, adaptability, and unpredictability that humans displayed. Every other species had clear weaknesses that could be exploited if necessary. Humans seemed to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Their inability to agree with each other led to diverse approaches to problems. Their tendency toward conflict drove rapid technological advancement. Their emotional nature, which should have made them unstable, instead gave them incredible motivation to overcome obstacles. "Maintain standard observation protocols," Veltar finally ordered, "but increase monitoring of their space programs and military research. I want to know the moment they develop anything that could pose a threat to our operations." As his crew returned to their duties, Veltar continued to stare at the small blue planet. Somewhere down there, 7 billion humans were going about, their daily lives completely unaware that their future hung in the balance. They did not know that advanced beings watched their every move and debated their fate. The irony was not lost on him. The Zephyrian collective had always prided itself on being patient, careful, and wise. They made decisions based on thorough analysis and long-term thinking. But with humans, their very caution might be their downfall. Every cycle they delayed a decision was another cycle for humanity to grow stronger and more unpredictable. Yet, Veltar found himself strangely reluctant to recommend immediate action. There was something fascinating about these chaotic, creative, stubborn beings. Part of him wanted to see what they would become if left alone. He just hoped that curiosity would not doom them all. 20 cycles had passed since Commander Veltar first began watching Earth. The observation fleet had grown to 30 ships, all hidden throughout the solar system. What they had witnessed during those 20 cycles challenged everything the Zephyrian Collective thought they knew about developing species. High Counselor Zethmos stood in the great chamber of the Collective Council, his ancient form trembling with frustration. Around him, holographic displays showed the current state of human civilization. The images were troubling. They should have destroyed themselves by now, he said to the assembled council members. Look at their weapons. Nuclear arsenals capable of ending all life on their planet. Chemical weapons that could poison entire continents. Biological agents that could kill billions. Counselor Nixandra's tentacles writhed in agreement, yet they continue to multiply and spread. Their population has doubled since we began watching. Their cities grow larger. Their technology advances. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Velthara, we underestimated their capacity for self-control. Zethmos turned one of his eyes toward her. Self-control? They fought 3 major wars in the last 20 cycles. Millions died in each one. They polluted their oceans and poisoned their air. They clear-cut entire forests and drove hundreds of species extinct. This is self-control? The displays shifted to show the aftermath of the most recent human conflict. The Third Global War had lasted 8 years and involved weapons that even the Zephyrians found concerning. Entire cities had been reduced to radioactive waste. Biological weapons had created dead zones where nothing could live for decades. Yet, within 5 years of the war's end, humans were already rebuilding. Not just replacing what was lost, but creating something better. The destroyed cities became centers of new technology. The poisoned lands became testing grounds for environmental restoration techniques. The weapons of war became tools of exploration and construction. This is what troubles me most, Velthara said, manipulating the holographic controls. Watch this. The display showed human activities during their most recent war. While armies fought with devastating weapons on one continent, scientists on another continent were working together to cure diseases. Artists were creating beautiful works inspired by the tragedy. Engineers were designing better ways to feed the hungry and house the homeless. They fight and create at the same time, Velthara continued. Most species focus on one or the other. Either they are peaceful and stagnant, or they are warlike and destructive. Humans manage to be both destructive and creative simultaneously. Counselor Morkith, oldest of the council members, had been silent throughout the discussion. Now he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 3,000 cycles of experience. I have guided 47 species from primitive to spacefaring status, he said slowly. I have eliminated 23 species that proved too dangerous to allow into galactic civilization. In all that time, I have never encountered a species like these humans. He gestured toward the displays showing human cities. Look closely at their urban centers. Do you see the pattern? The other counselors studied the images. Human cities were chaotic, unplanned, constantly changing. Unlike the ordered, efficient cities of other species, human settlements seemed to grow organically, adapting to local conditions and changing needs. There is no pattern, Nixandra said. That is the problem. Exactly, Morkith replied. Every other species we have observed builds cities according to logical principles. Optimal traffic flow, efficient resource distribution, minimal environmental impact. Humans build cities that reflect their emotions, their history, their dreams. The display zoomed in to show individual humans going about their daily lives. Children played in parks while their parents worked in nearby buildings. Artists painted murals on walls while engineers designed spacecraft in underground laboratories. Musicians performed in the streets while scientists debated the nature of reality in university halls. They do not separate their activities the way logical species do, Morkith observed. For them, art and science, war and peace, work and play, These are not opposite things. They are all part of the same experience. Zethmos grew impatient. This philosophical discussion is interesting, but we must make a decision. Our models show that humans will achieve interstellar flight within 50 cycles. Once they leave their home system, our options become limited. What do our intervention protocols recommend? Asked Velthera. Nixandra activated new displays, showing the results of various simulation scenarios. If we make contact now and offer guidance, there is a 60% chance they will accept our leadership. However, there is also a 30% chance they will reject our authority and attempt to develop independently. The remaining 10% of scenarios result in open conflict. And if we eliminate them now? Simple and clean. A carefully designed asteroid impact or engineered plague would appear natural. No other species would suspect intervention. Zethmos considered this option seriously. It would be the safest course of action. In his long experience, species that could not be easily guided or controlled inevitably became threats to galactic stability. But Morkith raised an objection. Before we decide to eliminate them, we should consider what we might lose. These humans have developed technologies and concepts that even we do not fully understand, such as? Asked Nixandra skeptically. Morkith brought up new data streams from the observation posts. Their approach to artificial intelligence, for example. Where we have created logical, efficient thinking machines, humans are developing artificial minds that can create art, compose music, and even experience emotions. Their computers do not just calculate, they imagine. Imagination is inefficient, Nixandra stated. Perhaps, but it also produces solutions we would never consider. Look at their space program. The displays showed human spacecraft and space stations. Compared to Zephyrian technology, they were crude and inefficient. But they incorporated design elements that no logical engineer would include: art, symbolism, and features meant purely for psychological comfort. They send musicians and poets to space alongside their scientists, Morkith continued. They include viewing windows in spacecraft, not for navigation, but so the crew can see the stars and feel inspired. They carve messages of hope and love on probes sent to other worlds. Waste of resources, Nixandra insisted. Or perhaps the key to something we have lost. When did we last create something beautiful simply because beauty has value? When did we last explore the unknown for the joy of discovery rather than strategic advantage? The question hung in the air like a challenge. The Zephyrian collective had achieved perfect order, optimal efficiency, and complete stability. But in doing so, they had perhaps lost something essential. Zethmos tried to bring the discussion back to practical matters. Even if humans have interesting qualities, we must consider the threat they pose. Our projections show multiple scenarios where human expansion disrupts galactic civilization. Show us the most likely scenario, Velthara requested. The central display created a timeline projection showing potential human development over the next 500 cycles. In this scenario, humans achieved faster-than-light travel within 60 cycles and began establishing colonies throughout nearby star systems. Unlike other species, who typically establish orderly, planned colonies, humans created chaotic, diverse settlements. Each colony developed its own culture, technology, and approach to problems. Within 200 cycles, human space was a patchwork of different societies, all connected, but all unique. This diversity would spread, the simulation continued. Other species would encounter human traders, explorers, and settlers. They would be exposed to human ideas about individuality, creativity, and freedom of choice. The simulation showed the gradual breakdown of the ordered systems the collective had spent millennia establishing. Species that had been content under Zephyrian guidance began demanding self-determination. Worlds that had followed optimal development patterns began experimenting with human-inspired alternatives. The result, Zethmos said grimly, is chaos. The collapse of everything we have built. But Morkith saw something different in the projections. Or evolution. Perhaps the galaxy needs chaos. Perhaps perfect order has made us stagnant. That is a dangerous thought, Ixandra warned. All worthwhile thoughts are dangerous. The council fell silent, each member contemplating the decision. Before them, they had the power to end human civilization with a simple command. One ship, one weapon, one carefully placed asteroid, and the threat would be eliminated forever. Yet they hesitated. Something about these chaotic, creative, impossible. Humans gave them pause. Perhaps it was curiosity. Perhaps it was fear. Or perhaps, deep in their ancient hearts, they recognized something they had lost long ago, the willingness to take risks, to explore the unknown, to choose the difficult path because it led somewhere interesting. We will continue observation, Zethmos finally declared, but we will also prepare contingency plans. If humans prove too disruptive to galactic order, we will act. The council dispersed, but their decision had already changed everything. In choosing to wait, to study, to hesitate, they had given humanity the most precious gift possible, time. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the data on her screen and felt her heart skip a beat. After 15 years of searching, they had finally found definitive proof. The signals were faint, hidden in cosmic background radiation, but they were artificial. Alien technology was watching Earth. She picked up her secure phone and dialed a number she had memorized but never called. The voice that answered was calm and professional. "This is Director Chun. Is this about Project Looking Glass?" "There." "Here," Elena said simply. At least 12 ships, maybe more, hidden throughout the solar system. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Director Chun spoke again, his voice carefully controlled. "Are you certain? Completely?" "The gravitational anomalies we've been tracking for years make sense now. They're using some kind of cloaking technology, but they can't hide their mass signatures completely. We've been under observation for decades." Within 6 hours, Elena found herself in a windowless room, deep beneath the Pentagon. Around the table sat representatives from every major nation on Earth. The existence of this group was one of humanity's most closely guarded secrets. "Ladies and gentlemen," Director Chun began, "Dr. Vasquez has confirmed what we have suspected for some time. We are not alone, and we are being watched." General Morrison from the American delegation leaned forward. "How long have they been there?" "Our best estimates suggest at least 50 years, Elena replied. "Possibly longer. They've been very careful, but small inconsistencies in stellar observations going back to the 1970s now make sense." Dr. Petrov from the Russian team asked the obvious question. "If they have been watching us for 50 years, why have they not made contact?" "That," said Director Chun, "is the most important question, and we think we know the answer." He activated a holographic display showing human history over the past century. Wars, disasters, technological breakthroughs, and social changes flowed past in rapid sequence. "Look at the pattern," Chun continued. "Every time humanity has faced a major crisis, we have received subtle help. Inspiration that led to breakthrough. Technologies, resources discovered at just the right moment. Key individuals making decisions that seemed obvious at the time, but were actually quite unlikely." Elena studied the timeline. "You think they've been guiding us?" "We think they've been trying to. But here's what's interesting. Every time they've offered subtle guidance, we've taken it in unexpected directions. They give us nuclear technology. To power our cities, we also build weapons. They inspire computer development for scientific research. We create global communication networks and artificial intelligence. Professor Williams from the British delegation understood immediately. They're anthropologists studying us. Or perhaps zookeepers deciding our fate. Either way, Chun said grimly, we are not in control of our own destiny, unless we do something about it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had achieved everything they were proud of: spaceflight, global communication, medical advances, artistic achievements, while being watched and possibly manipulated by beings with technology far beyond their understanding. What do you propose? Asked General Morrison. Chun smiled for the first time since the meeting began. We give them exactly what they expect to see, while preparing something they will never expect. Over the next 5 years, humanity began the most complex deception in history. On the surface, they continued to develop along predictable lines. Space stations were built using conventional technology. Wars were fought with traditional weapons. Scientific research followed logical paths. But beneath the surface, a different kind of revolution was taking place in hidden laboratories around the world. Human scientists began reverse engineering the principles behind the alien observation. Technology. Not by studying alien devices, they had none, but by studying the effects those devices had on local space-time. Dr. Sarah Kim, working in a converted subway tunnel in Seoul, made the first breakthrough. By analyzing the minute gravitational distortions caused by the hidden alien ships, she developed a new understanding of how matter and energy interacted at the quantum level. It's not about building better technology, she explained to her international team via encrypted quantum communication. It's about understanding reality differently. Meanwhile, in a basement laboratory in São Paulo, Dr. Carlos Mendoza was exploring the implications of consciousness on quantum mechanics. His work was inspired by the alien ability to remain hidden despite their physical presence. They're not just using technology to stay invisible, he told his research partner. They're somehow existing slightly outside normal space-time. But consciousness might be the key to accessing those higher dimensions. The work was slow and dangerous. 3 laboratories suffered catastrophic accidents when experiments breached the barriers between dimensions. 12 researchers died when their consciousness became untethered from reality during attempts to map higher dimensional space. But humanity had one advantage the aliens didn't expect. They were willing to take risks that no rational species would consider. In hidden facilities on every continent, human researchers began developing technologies that violated known physics. Quantum consciousness interfaces that allowed minds to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Reality manipulation devices that could alter the fundamental constants of physics in localized areas. Temporal displacement generators that moved objects through time instead of space. All of this work was hidden from the alien observers through careful misdirection. The real research happened in facilities that appeared to be studying conventional physics. The breakthrough discoveries were disguised as failed experiments. The most dangerous technologies were tested in remote locations during natural disasters. When the aliens would expect unusual energy readings, Dr. Elena Vasquez, now head of the global coordination effort, stood in the primary command center hidden beneath the Sahara Desert. Around her, hundreds of scientists and technicians monitored humanity's greatest secret project. Status report, she called out. Australia team has achieved stable quantum tunneling, reported one technician. They can move matter through 11 dimensions without detection. Japan team reports successful consciousness transfer, said another. Test subject maintained awareness while existing as pure thought for 17 minutes. Brazil team has cracked temporal mechanics. They can move objects backwards through time by up to 6 hours. Elena nodded, but she knew they needed more. The aliens had been watching humanity for decades. They understood human capabilities based on observed behavior. But they had no idea what humans could accomplish when they stopped trying to be rational. What? About Project Mirror? She asked. Dr. Combs' voice crackled over the communication system from her laboratory in Seoul. We're ready. We can now observe the observers without them knowing. Full real-time monitoring of all alien vessels and installations. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. For 50 years, aliens had watched humanity while remaining hidden. Now humans could watch them back. The first images from the alien ships were shocking. The beings inside were far more advanced than humans had imagined, but they were also clearly struggling to understand human behavior. Elena watched as alien scientists ran simulation after simulation, trying to predict human actions. Every simulation failed. The aliens expected humans to follow logical development patterns. They expected human society to become more organized and efficient over time. They expected human technology to advance along predictable lines. Instead, humans continued to be chaotic, creative, and completely unpredictable. They're getting frustrated, observed Dr. Petrov, who had joined the monitoring effort. Look at their body language during their planning sessions. They're confused. Elena smiled grimly. Good. Confusion is exactly what we want. Over the following months, humanity began the final phase of their preparation. They had developed technologies the aliens couldn't detect or understand. They had learned to observe their observers without being noticed. Most importantly, they had realized that their greatest weakness, their unpredictable, chaotic nature, was actually their greatest strength. The aliens had spent decades trying to categorize and understand human behavior. But humans weren't following any category. They were writing their own rules. In research facilities around the globe, scientists put the finishing touches on technologies that would change everything. Quantum reality anchors that could make human consciousness native to multiple dimensions. Probability cascade generators that turned unlikely events into certainties. Temporal reflection arrays that could make effects precede their causes. The most ambitious project was taking place in a facility built inside an extinct volcano in Antarctica. There, an international team was constructing humanity's ultimate WEAPO, not a device for destruction, but a tool for transformation. Project Bootstrap is ready, Dr. Kim reported during the final planning meeting. We can now exist outside conventional spacetime while remaining fully conscious and capable of action. Elena looked around the room at representatives from every nation on Earth. For the first time in human history, the entire species was united in a single purpose. Are we sure about this? Asked General Morrison. Once we reveal. Commander Veltar was reviewing routine sensor data when his world changed forever. The readings made no sense. According to his instruments, a human being was standing directly behind him in the command center of the Silent Judgment. He spun around, all 6 eyes focusing on the impossible sight. A middle-aged human woman stood calmly near the navigation station, wearing simple civilian clothes and a knowing smile. Hello, Commander, she said in perfect Zephyrian. My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. We need to talk. Every alarm on the ship should have been screaming. Their security systems were designed to detect any foreign matter larger than a molecule. The ship's defensive barriers could stop weapons that could destroy planets. Yet this human woman had simply appeared in their most secure location. Impossible. Veltar whispered. We thought so too, Elena replied. But humans have a gift for making the impossible happen. Around the command center, Veltar's crew stood frozen in shock. Science Officer Ketharas' tentacles had turned bright orange with fear. Data analyst Morgan was frantically checking his instruments, convinced they were malfunctioning. How? Veltar managed to ask. Elena gestured casually at the air around her. Your technology is impressive, Commander. Cloaking fields, gravitational shields, matter displacement systems. Very logical, very efficient. But you're still thinking in 3 dimensions. She reached into what appeared to be empty space and pulled out a small device. We've learned to step sideways through reality. Your sensors can't detect us because we're not entirely here. We exist in the spaces between your dimensions. Before Veltar could respond, more humans began appearing throughout his ship, not materializing like transported matter, but simply stepping into existence as if they had always been there. Men and women of various ages, all calm, all smiling politely. "Please don't be alarmed," Elena said as Veltar reached for his weapon. "We're not here to harm you. We're here to return a favor." "What favor?" "You've been watching us for nearly 70 years, learning about us, studying our behavior, making decisions about our future." Elena's smile became less friendly. "Now it's our turn to watch you." The ship's communication system crackled to life with panicked reports from other vessels in the observation fleet. Every ship was reporting the same impossible situation. Humans appearing in their most secure areas, calmly introducing themselves and explaining that they had been discovered. High Counselor Zethmos appeared on the emergency communication channel, his ancient features twisted with confusion and anger. "All ships report to council chambers immediately. We have a crisis situation." "I'm afraid that won't be possible," Elena said, looking directly at the holographic image of Zethmos. "Your council is currently hosting some uninvited guests." The communication feed shifted to show the great council chamber. Humans stood beside each council member's position, some sitting casually in the observers' galleries, others examining the advanced technology with obvious interest. "Greetings, High Counselor," said a human man standing next to Zethmos himself. "I'm Director Chun, Earth's coordinator for extraterrestrial affairs. I believe we have some things to discuss." Veltar watched his commander's training take over. Despite the impossible situation, Zethmos straightened and addressed the humans with dignity. "How long have you known of our presence?" 15 years since we confirmed it," Chun replied. "But we suspected for much longer. You're not as invisible as you think. That is impossible. Our technology is beyond your understanding." Chun smiled. "Your technology is certainly impressive. But you made one critical error in your assessment of humanity." "Which is?" "You assumed we develop along the same logical paths as other species. You expected us to follow rules, to advance in predictable stages, to think in conventional ways." Chon gestured at the humans scattered throughout the council chamber. "But humans don't follow rules we didn't make ourselves." Counselor Nixandra, her tentacles writhing with agitation, demanded answers. "What do you want from us?" "The same thing you wanted from us," replied a human woman standing near her station. "Understanding. We want to know who you are, what you've done to other species, and why you thought you had the right to decide our fate without asking us." Elena turned back to Veltar. "For 70 years, you've watched us grow and change. You've seen our wars, our achievements, our struggles. You've debated whether to guide us, control us, or eliminate us, all without ever considering a fourth option, which is letting us choose for ourselves." Around the silent judgment, space itself began to change. Ships became visible where nothing had been detected before. Not Cepharian vessels, but human. Craft using technologies that bent the laws of physics in ways the aliens had never imagined. The human ships were strange, chaotic in design, covered with art and symbols that served no logical purpose. They moved in patterns that defied conventional navigation, sometimes seeming to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. "Your fleet is impressive," Veltar admitted. "Thank you. But we're not here to fight you," Elena said. "We're here to demonstrate something important." She activated a device on her wrist, and suddenly the space around Earth became visible to all Zephorian sensors. The view was shocking. Thousands of human installations dotted the solar system. Space stations that shouldn't exist, mining operations. On asteroids that had been empty the day before, research facilities built inside planets using technology that violated known physics. "This is impossible," Cathara gasped. "We have been monitoring every human activity. We would have detected this construction." "You were monitoring what we wanted you to monitor," Elena explained patiently, "while you watched our obvious activities. Governments, military installations, universities. Our real work was happening in dimensions you couldn't access." The displays showed the scope of human achievement. Cities existed inside folded space, invisible to conventional sensors. Research stations phased in and out of normal time, conducting experiments across multiple timelines simultaneously. Manufacturing centers that created matter from pure energy, powered by controlled miniature black holes. "How long?" Veltar asked. Weakly. "How long have we been building this?" 20 years. "How long have we known about your observation network?" 15 years. "How long have we been watching you watch us?" Elena's smile became predatory. 5 years. She gestured again, and new displays appeared showing the interior of Zephyrian ships and facilities. Every private conversation, every planning session, every debate about humanity's fate had been recorded and analyzed. "We know about the 47 species you've guided to peaceful integration," Helena continued. "We know about the 23 species you've eliminated as too dangerous. We know about your careful manipulation of galactic civilization to maintain your control." Director Chun's voice echoed from the council chamber. "We also know that you're not the first species to achieve galactic dominance. You replaced someone else, didn't you? Someone who made the same mistake you're making now, assuming that control could be maintained forever." High Counselor Zethmos was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of terrible understanding. "You are not here to negotiate." "Oh, but we are," Chun replied. "We're here to offer you the same choice you've been offering other species for millennia. You can accept our guidance toward a better future, or you can be classified as too dangerous to remain in control." Elena turned to address Veltar directly. "Commander, you've spent your career observing and categorizing species. Tell me, in all your experience, have you ever encountered a species that willingly gave up power once they achieved it?" Veltar knew the answer. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no dominant species had ever stepped down peacefully. They fought to maintain control until they were destroyed or replaced. "You're asking us to do something we have never seen any species do," he said. "Yes," Elena agreed. "We're asking you to evolve, to grow beyond the need to control others, to become something better than what you are. And if we refuse?" Elena's expression became sad but determined. "Then you'll discover why every species you've encountered has been predictable, while humanity remains impossible to understand." She began to fade from view, becoming translucent as she prepared to step back into whatever dimension she had emerged. "From you have one of your cycles to decide," she said as her image became barely visible. "Choose wisely. This is the only offer you'll receive." As Elena disappeared completely, Veltar realized that everything had changed. For 70 years, the Zephyrian Collective had held the power to decide humanity's fate. Now humans held the power to decide the Watchers had become the watched. The judges had become the judged. And for the first time in 3,000 years of galactic dominance, the Zephyrian Collective faced a species that refused to be controlled. The question now was whether they could learn to live in a galaxy where they were no longer the ones making all the decisions. Veltar suspected they were about to find out just how difficult that transition would be. One cycle had passed since the humans had delivered their ultimatum. High Counselor Zethmos sat alone in his private chamber, staring at the reports scattered across his desk. Each document told the same story, the Zephyrian Collective's 3,000 year. Reign was ending. The humans had kept their word. They had given the Collective one cycle to decide. The Council had debated for months, running countless simulations, analyzing every possible option. In the end, they had chosen as every dominant species before them had chosen. They had decided to fight Dot. It had been a mistake. The war, if it could be called that, had lasted exactly 17 days. The Zephyrian fleet, pride of galactic civilization, had been neutralized without a single shot being fired. Human ships had simply appeared throughout collective space, and Zephyrian vessels had found themselves unable to function. Not destroyed, disabled. Their weapons would not fire. Their engines would not start. Their communication systems transmitted only messages chosen by humans. It was as if the laws of physics had been rewritten to exclude. Zephyrian Technology. Commander Veltar entered the chamber without being announced. The old protocols no longer mattered. His ship, like all others in the fleet, was now effectively under human control. The evacuation of Zephyr Prime is complete, he reported. The last transport ships have departed for the colony worlds. Zethmos nodded slowly. The humans had been generous in their own terrifying way. They had given the Zephyrian population safe passage to distant worlds, far from the core systems that had been the center of galactic government. They would be allowed to live, to maintain their culture, even to develop their technology, but they would never again rule over others. Word from the other species? Zethmos asked. Veltar's expression grew even more grim. The Altarian Republic has declared independence. The Vegan Trade Confederation is no longer accepting our administrative oversight. The Centauri Defense League is requesting direct communication with Earth. It was what they had feared most. The humans had not simply defeated the Collective. They had inspired every other species to question the established order. Across the galaxy, worlds that had accepted Zephyrian guidance for millennia were suddenly demanding self-determination. They are offering them what they offered us, Veltar continued. Freedom to choose their own path, protection from interference, and access to human technology that we cannot match or understand. Zethmos stood and walked to the window overlooking the empty capital city. Once, millions of beings from across the galaxy had come here to receive wisdom and guidance. Now the streets were empty, the great buildings dark and silent. How did we fail to see it? He asked quietly. Veltar joined him at the window. We saw what we expected to see. We thought we understood the patterns of development, the rules that govern intelligent species. We believed that chaos was weakness, and order was strength. But humans proved that chaos could be a weapon. Not a weapon, Veltar corrected. A way of thinking. A way of being. They did not defeat us through superior force. They defeated us by refusing to follow any rules we could predict or counter. On the desk behind them, a communication device activated itself. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared as a hologram, looking exactly as she had when she first materialized in the Silent Judgment. High Counselor, she said politely, I wanted to speak with you before our final departure from this system. Have you come to gloat over your victory? Zethmos asked bitterly. Elena's expression was genuinely sad. This was never about victory. This was about freedom. The freedom of every species to make their own choices, even if those choices lead to failure. You have destroyed everything we built. 3,000 years of peace and order, gone. We have ended 3,000 years of control and stagnation, Elena replied firmly. Tell me, High Counselor, when was the last time your people created something truly new? When did you last explore unknown regions of space, simply to see what was there? When did you last take a risk for the sake of discovery? Zethmos wanted to argue, but he could not. The Zephyrian collective had achieved perfect efficiency and total security. But in doing so, they had stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped dreaming. What happens now? Veltar asked. Now the galaxy learns what it means to be free, Elena said. Some species will thrive. Some will struggle. Some may even fail completely. But they will do so by their own choice, not because someone else decided. Their fate. The hologram shifted to show images from across the galaxy. On thousands of worlds, beings who had lived under collective guidance for generations were making their first independent decisions. Some were forming new alliances. Others were exploring previously forbidden technologies. Many were simply celebrating the knowledge that their future was their own to determine. It will be chaos, Zethmos protested. Yes, Elena agreed. Beautiful, creative, unpredictable chaos. The kind that produces art and music and literature. The kind that drives exploration and discovery. The kind that makes life worth living. She paused, then continued with obvious sincerity. High Counselor, your people are not our enemies. You are simply the latest in a long line of species that achieved power and forgot that power is meant to serve life, not control it. You can still choose to be part of what comes next, by learning to live without control, by accepting that other species have the right to make their own mistakes, by remembering that wisdom shared freely is more valuable than order imposed. By force, Zethmos considered her words. Around the galaxy, the careful structure his people had maintained for millennia was crumbling. But perhaps something better was being born from the ruins. What of humanity? He asked. Will you take our place as the dominant species? Elena laughed, and the sound was both beautiful and terrifying. That would defeat the entire purpose. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We want to explore it, experience it, learn from it. We want to see what amazing things other species can accomplish when they're free to be themselves. But someone must maintain order. Someone must prevent wars, guide development, ensure stability. Must they? Elena asked. Perhaps the galaxy is old enough to govern itself. Perhaps it's time to find out what happens when no one species holds ultimate power. The hologram began to fade as Elena prepared to disconnect. Your people have been given a second chance that few species receive. Use it wisely. Learn to find joy in discovery rather than satisfaction in control. The universe is vast and full of wonders. Go explore them. As Elena's image disappeared, Zethmos felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Uncertainty about the future. For 3,000 years, he had known exactly what would happen next. The collective would maintain order, guide lesser species, and preserve galactic stability. Now he had no idea what tomorrow would bring. Strangely, the feeling was not entirely unpleasant. Commander, he said to Veltar, prepare a ship for long-range exploration. It has been too long since we traveled to unknown regions of space. Where shall we go? Zethmos smiled for the first time in decades. Wherever we have never been before. It is time we remembered what it feels like to be surprised. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were taking place. Species that had forgotten how to dream were remembering. Worlds that had accepted limitations were pushing boundaries. The careful, predictable order of the collective was giving way to something chaotic and beautiful and utterly unpredictable. Years later, when galactic historians tried to understand what had happened, they would struggle to explain how one small, chaotic species had changed everything without conquest, without destruction, without imposing their will on others. The answer was simple, though few understood it at the time. Humanity had offered the galaxy something that no dominant species had ever provided. The chance to be free. And freedom, once tasted, could never be forgotten. In the end, the quiet species that had been watching was not the Zephyrians. carefully observing and cataloging human development. It was humanity itself, quietly watching the galaxy, waiting for the moment when they were strong enough to set everyone free. They had been given every chance to accept control, to submit to guidance, to follow the safe path that so many species before them had taken. Instead, they had chosen the difficult path. They had chosen freedom. And now it was too late for anyone to stop them from sharing that freedom with the entire galaxy. The Watchers had become the liberators, and the universe would never be the same.